Today, we're talking about monsters. Don't go away.
Welcome to Shadow.
Hey there, Monica Bodierski, coming to you from Treaty 13 lands, Dish with One Spoon territory, traditional home of the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Haudenosaunee peoples, and the many, many other people who have crossed through this territory and occupied these lands for over 100,000 years. So, here's what I'd like to talk about today, coming to you from this little cabin. Monsters. Monsters. Real, imagined. The ones that we find in the shadows, the ones that we see in the movies, the ones under the bed and in the closet. Monsters. I've always found this fascinating. And a few years ago, right when I was creating the House of Shadows Lenormand, I went to this magnificent show at the Art Gallery of Ontario. It was created by Guillermo del Toro, a very well-known filmmaker who's given us so many fantastic films. One of my faves shot right here in Takaronto, The Shape of Water. There's a real art in the way Guillermo del Toro addresses the horrors that we encounter and monsters, and it resonates deeply with how we feel about certain people, certain groups of people, and it hits me deeply in the conversation of inclusivity and diversity, especially when it comes to people who feel on the fringe, people who are marginalized, people who are ignored or treated as though they are monsters simply for having their own opinions, their own look, their own sexual preferences, gender identifications, religious, spiritual beliefs. I could go on forever. Now, speaking as a person who has a great deal of privilege with this skin tone, I can tell you, doesn't matter though. Even if folks are blue-eyed, blonde, perfect model height and weight, none of which I am, just saying, even those folks who are generally considered the ideal are harboring monsters somewhere in there. Monsters of doubt and insecurity, monsters of things that they've said or done that they know are just not ethical. Everyone has monsters, and everyone at some point treats people who are different than themselves inappropriately, whether we want to admit that or not. That's a little shadow work that some of us should really look at. I depict monsters in my art, and I've always watched them on TV, especially the Munsters and the Addams Family, who see themselves as perfectly normal in the outside world as rather monstrous. That held so much appeal for me. Anyone who's an artist, or perhaps born very intuitive, to put it mildly, or perhaps considered a foreigner, even though I'm a first-generation settler here in Takaronto. You know, these things resonate with us for different reasons. We have different abilities, we have different ways of seeing things. So monsters are very much symbolic of outside and outsiders. And there's a whole community of us. And I'm really grateful when people like Chris Honorio interview you and say things to that effect, that they can resonate with that or they appreciate that. It just makes me feel good to know that I've reached people who are also perhaps feeling less than middle of the road average heteronormative folk. Where am I going with this? Well, take a look at your monsters. Take a look at why you hate horror or why you like horror. What is it about scares that you enjoy? Safe scares, maybe? What is it about the appearance of monsters under the bed and in the closet that you enjoy? What is it you're facing? What part of you, what part of us And maybe you've actually encountered actual ghosts and monsters. I know I've seen a few really creepy things. I'm going to share one of those stories with you really quickly because it bears sharing. When I was young, I spent some time up north. It was pitch black except for moonlight. We had a habit of walking along an upper road, and I was running ahead of a friend because we took our canoe somewhere and we snuck through somebody's cottage property. We knew they weren't there. As I made my way up the stairs here and up to the top of the road, I have really good night vision, by the way, just one of those other unusual things. I guess my people dwelled in the dark a lot. I don't know. There is some Scandinavian there, maybe 6 months out of the year in darkness helps you develop that in your eyeballs. Anyway, when I hit the top, I was laughing and joking all the way up the stairs, running at quite a clip because I knew she couldn't catch up to me. And I was looking over my shoulder, laughing because she was still pulling up the canoe and I was way ahead, like 100 stairs ahead. And I turned really quickly, and in front of me, much higher than my own eye level, were these two red, glowing eyes, the size of apricots or plums. Just red, perfectly circular eyes. And I knew they were eyes because I saw a blink. And they were much taller. Now, I'm not a short or particularly tall person. I'm about 5'6". And these eyes would have placed whatever this was at least 8 to 10 feet tall, by my calculation. As a terrified 14-year-old, I screamed, didn't even think, tore back down the stairs in the dark and bumped into her near the shore where she was a much cooler teenager than I was at about, 16, and said, "What are you doing?" I told her what I saw, barely sputtered it out, and of course she just laughed. We went back up the stairs, but I was in shock. That creature was perfectly silent. I know bears. I know animals really well. I've never seen red reflected from an animal's eyes. Although apparently it does happen, there was no light source to reflect. I had no flashlight, and the moon was barely visible. It just started to wax. It was silent. There was no breathing, there was no sound, no growling, nothing. And I sure didn't hang out long enough to know what that was. But that was my own monster encounter. Have you had any? I don't know. There's something intriguing there, isn't there? We'll never know what some of these things are. Let me know in the comments. Until next time, have a great week. Bye-bye.